We are live, and I see there's a couple people joining already, which is fantastic. Very excited to be here today. And when I thought about starting this live, I just thought it would be really cool. I totally admire what both of you do here. And so I thought, oh, it would be really cool to have a conversation just about, the relationships that can happen when people are willing to stay curious across different neurotypes and just the things that we can learn from one another. So I think my thinking for today was like, let's talk about friendship, connection, misunderstanding, curiosity, what we can learn from each other. When neurodiversity is part of the conversation. And so I'm really excited to be here. So I'm going to invite you guys to introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and we'll go from there. So who wants to go first?
Chris does.
No, I
Okay.
don't. You do.
Okay. I'm Sam Nelson. I am the creator of Neurodivergent Not Broken here on Substack. I live in the Midwest in the US. I'm married to my husband, 17 years. We have two kids, two girls, 9 and 11. I am ADHD. My husband is ADHD and autistic, and our kids are a mixture of both. And we have a mixture of friends that are all over the board too. So I think this conversation on connection and relationships is going to be very relatable for a lot of people. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm Chris. I live out here in the best state in the Union, Massachusetts. No, but I do live in the great state of Massachusetts, and proud New Englander. I'm the guy behind Now That I'm Still Here, and I'm also autistic, and it's one of the things I explore in some of my writing, although I've been neglecting to do that at a much deeper level of, what it means to be late diagnosed as autistic and going through life as an autistic individual. But there's a lot more to what I write about too, but that's one of the focal points.
Awesome. Well, I'm Haide Wall Giesbrecht. I feel like the outlier here because I live in Canada. I'm on the west coast of Canada, beautiful British Columbia. I am the only neurotypical in my household of 6 plus 1, and a bunch of animals that, are all quirky in and of themselves. I'm with my husband. We've been married 32 years, discovered probably about 20 years into our relationship that he was autistic, and then added ADHD to the mix after that. All of that, not surprisingly, came after our kids were diagnosed as autistic and ADHD, a really common experience I find for families. And it made sense of a lot of the challenges that we had and that we had to really work through, but it also made a lot of sense as to why I ended up with him. And I'm sure we'll get into some of that as we go. I write here on Substack under Encouragement Along the Journey, where my hope is to offer an authentic, connected space where people can find encouragement, maybe some relatability. I've recently started kind of a little side thing called Reflections on the Sacred and the Ordinary, where I kind of approach similar topics, but more from kind of a faith and spirituality perspective for those who are interested. In both spaces, my goal is that it be a really accepting, gracious, spacious place that people can connect as they feel they need to. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. So, yeah, I'm curious, like when you guys said yes, because I approached you both and I was like, I started with Chris and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And you were like, yeah, sounds great. And I'm like, what about like Sam? And you were like, oh, I know Sam. Sam's great. And I was like, okay, perfect. Do you want to talk to Sam? And you're like, no, why don't you? And I'm like, ah, okay. And so, Sam, like you said in our pre-little chat, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody can say no. So that is like a total philosophy for me. I often put myself in really weird situations because I figure, well, if the other person doesn't like it, they're adult enough to say no, and that's okay too. So I approached you and you were like, this sounds great. So here we are.
Easy.
Um, Easy peasy. So, yeah, like, as you guys were thinking about this, what what really kind of captured you on thinking about this topic?
Well,
Hmm.
I being the three of us, I knew it would be good and it would be easy and just like natural and
Yeah.
flow, and got me thinking about like all the conversations I've had in the last couple years with my husband, with my friends, with my kids about like, oh, I just realized we have different communication styles. Oh, I realized that that has had some challenges, and like noticing like the difference in me and like my best friend who is very neurotypical, for a lack of a better word, and being like, oh, how do you keep your house so clean and organized? And like, what do you mean you're like on top of your to-do list? Like, what? So the older I got, the more I realized, like, oh, wait a minute, like there is more of a difference here than I realized, and also became very thankful that she has been so patient with me and kind with me. Like when I don't respond to her text message for a week, she's like, "It's okay. I know.
Yeah.
If I really need to get a hold of you, I'll call you." Like
Yeah.
I don't take it personally.
Yeah. Awesome.
So those were kind of the first things that came to mind when you brought up that topic.
Mm.
Hmm. I think for me, what came up was I navigated through life not knowing I was autistic
Mm.
till I was in my mid 30s,
Mm.
and then finally, things had a name, right?
Mm.
And that's made me more self-aware, and so it made me realize a couple things, like why uh, certain things make me uncomfortable, like emotion, or at least demonstrating emotion, and if someone's crying, and
Mm.
or if I get flustered because uh, sudden change happens, I can, tell my friends, like, okay, I got a little flustered, because of sudden change, and I'm a structured individual, and I need plans ahead of time, and if they change, like, try to let me know ahead of time. But if you can't, you know, I'm gonna go through the motions. I'm gonna kick and scream a little bit, and just roast me along the way. And it sort of allowed for a lot more self awareness and self advocacy, and
Mm.
trying to find a way for a neurotypical world to meet me halfway, but also the inverse can also be true. Me meeting the neurotypical world halfway, because I don't, my intent was never to be like, oh, I'm autistic, and have it become my crutch, right? And so it's kind of like a give and take, and I see it most of the time as an opportunity for growth in my relationships.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that like for me, the thought that came to mind was um, how I view and approach this. Our family has never looked at this through an illness model. We have very much looked at this as self awareness, understanding different ways of functioning that have strengths and challenges, just like being a neurotypical has strengths and challenges, right? And I think with that, like, there's this opportunity to just learn from each other. And I think coming into this, that's what I was like, ooh, I think this is a really fun opportunity just to really showcase that this is just different ways of perceiving the world. And even with all of us, like, I am one neurotypical. Not every neurotypical is like me, and you guys have your descriptions of who you are, and not everybody is like you. And I know, Richard and I, long before we knew that he was on the spectrum, we always talked about, like, we hated books that told us how to do things, like, 5 steps to being a successful parent. And first of all, they rarely worked for us, so that was really frustrating. And then there was just this sense of, like, why can we not have more of the world be descriptive rather than prescriptive? Like, let's just talk about our experiences, let's share our stories. And I'm, like, such a firm believer in the fact that stories are essential to building compassion and understanding, and they just, like, give feet to everything else. And so yeah, I think that was what I was excited about, was just, I'm sure we will share some stories and people might relate to them, or they might find their thinking expanded by them, and I think that's a really cool thing. So yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, it's funny, as I said that, I'm like, one of my favorite, oh gosh, one of my favorite I have so many favorite stories about my family and experiences, but um my when Richard and I first met, we had, like, these um what I found super refreshing was, I had just come back from college, university, where I, was really challenged to think. And I felt totally ripped off by the school system because I had done, like, all of my years of school. I was top of the class, did super well at everything, and got to university, and it was just more of the same, jumping through hoops, whatever. But at this private college, we were challenged to go deep in a way that I had never anywhere in my life been challenged to go deep. And I remember feeling so ripped off. Like, everybody taught me how to think, but nobody ever, or how to think, what to think, but nobody ever taught me how to think or gave me permission even to think. And so coming back, felt like stepping back into this really restrictive space where there were all these expectations of how you do things, and they were very rigid and boxy, and I hated every moment of it. And then I met Rich, and every conversation we had, like, skipped all the shit and went straight for the cool, deep, like, why is it that when people get married and they have these unity candles, they, like, light the middle candle and they blow out the candle? Like, that's ridiculous. You don't lose yourself in relationship, like, those kinds of weird conversations about everything. And I just remember, like, being totally taken in by that. Like, I love this. This is like amazing conversation. And then he was playing on a softball team, and I was friends with some of the girls that played on the team, and had gone to some of the games. Wasn't at one particular game, but the story that they told was, did you hear Richard? Like, he's such a male chauvinist. Like, I can't believe it. And they were talking about the things that he had been saying, and he was like, you hit like a girl, you run like a girl, and he was, like, calling out all these, like, horrible things, and I was just like, do I not know him? Like, and it almost kept me from pursuing any kind of friendship with him, because I was like, wait a minute, if this is like a bait and switch, like, he's putting on this act for me, and then that's not actually who he is, I'm not interested. Like, give me the real thing. Only to discover that no, in fact, he was, like, putting on this persona that he saw all the other guys on the field put on. Um, and that totally wasn't him. And so it's interesting. Like, that was one of our first stories of this very different way of interacting with the world. Um, do you guys have any, like, stories like that of just, like, noticing a difference in some way?
Chris, you got something? I'm trying to pick, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's what I find really funny
Mhm.
is as a as someone who is on the spectrum, I tend to really, filter myself a lot,
Mm.
and it became a survival
Mhm.
mechanism for me. And my so I have a name for my autistic masking. It's called, my dark passenger, right?
Mm.
It's the like inner narration in my head that says, no, act this way because this way it makes you more digestible. And
Mm.
I was talking to my mom about autistic masking last summer,
Mm.
and she utterly confused by it
Mm.
still. And what, she kind of equated it with being disingenuous or
Mm.
lying, right?
Oh.
But and whereas I try to explain it makes me more digestible, right?
Yeah.
Because if I say what I really feel, it's gonna make me sound rude. And she's
Mm.
like, no, I know you. I'm your mother. I know you well enough. You should just not mask all the time around me. And I said, be careful what you wish for. So we did a little experiment, and I was like, I'll go 2 days unfiltered. She didn't last 2 hours.
Oh gosh.
I was very unfiltered, and she's like, why are you such a pompous asshole?
Oh.
And I'm like, you see, I'm just being very direct and very like unfiltered. I'm not meaning to come across as an asshole, but uh and it was just like, and it's things like that kind of make me laugh of like the what be what what becomes a socially accepted norm uh isn't necessarily how someone's mind operates, and if you walk around it, you get really judged for it. And what do we
Mhm.
do?
Yeah.
I will piggyback off of that because you talked about my exact thought of like my husband, I didn't realize this till, the last couple years, and we've been together for a long time. So that's a lot of years, like not quite understanding this of like him when we would get into these like kind of tug of war between us for no like real good reason. We're just communicating differently. And he's like, I'm just the asshole. Like
Mm.
that's always been the thing is I'm just the
Mhm.
asshole. And realizing that like, oh no, you are just direct and I am not.
Mhm.
Like he will just he I mean, of course he can be very good at masking and all of that, but like when he's at home and with me, he's probably like his most unmasked. Um so yeah, he doesn't filter a lot of things.
Mm.
And that if you only perceive that in the way that is like socially acceptable,
Mhm.
like people think it's rude,
Yeah.
right? And then when we project that back to them, of course, like you could take that as I'm just being an asshole. And like that's just been, the projection towards him, I think his whole life of like he was the kid that wasn't afraid to ask the questions, didn't care about what, the teachers thought of it. Um And I was the opposite,
Mm.
like complete opposite, very passive communicator, wanted to keep everybody happy, wanted to please everybody. And he was like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Why would I do that?
Mm.
And I'm like, whoa. Um, so it's really big for us realizing that we just communicate differently. And kind of back to your point, Chris, of like we each had to find a way. So how do we meet each other a little bit closer? Not that either of us needs to change because it's wrong, but I had to be more conscious about how could I be more direct because he needs things to be direct. And when they're not, it really stresses him out. So I had to be like, okay, how can I say this without beating around the bush? How can I say this without implying or like hoping you pick up what I'm putting down? Of just, he's like, I just need you to tell me exactly what the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Tell me. Don't be passive aggressive.
Yeah. I'm
So
not a
once-
mind reader.
No. So I was like, okay, I need to work on being better at that. And he has also kind of learned to be like, and again, not that this is even necessary, but it is what has worked for us, of him saying like, if that sounded harsh, that's not how I meant it to come off. Like, I'm just, I don't mean it that way. And also realizing that he isn't aware of the tone of his own voice sometimes. He's like, if you had a video of me, saying what I said, and you were to play it back to me, I'd be like, that's what I sounded like. So he's not always aware of his volume either, or his tone, and I believe him. Like, so sometimes he's like, yeah, maybe the way it came off is not the way I intended it, or the way that I heard it in my own self, and he's been more aware of that, which has helped us as we're both more understanding of each other, just in that area alone.
I struggle with that too, the tone and how I come across. And with my late lady, it's something that we like worked on too. It's like uh I I share a lot of your struggles with your husband, in the sense of like, I need things to be direct and clear, right? And I'm going to take you at what you say, literally. And it was my lady wasn't clear. She beat around the bush, and I would tell her like, I'm going to take you literally. And if I come across as a jerk, ask questions.
Yes.
How did you intend for that to come across? And I will tell you. But at the same time, she's like, well, if I'm beating around the bush, you ask questions. Fair enough. So it's we got to find, it makes it interesting, being on both ends of nature, in the sense of how we process things and communicate, so that we can just move together in that same direction. And sometimes it can be a pain in the ass. Sometimes it can be great.
Well, and I think, yeah, like as you're talking, I'm thinking, as humans, I think we often don't do a good job of communicating, and we think that it's the other person's fault, right? Like there's something about like having some humility and recognizing that, like I remember Rich saying to me, how was I supposed to know that if you didn't tell me? And I'm like, well, I did. I implied it here and here and here. And he's like, I'm not a mind reader. How should I know that? And that was like mind blown for me. I'm like, what? You're not a mind reader? This is how my family communicated, and recognizing like, assumptions. I mean, I think, Sam, you were talking about just some of those assumptions that people make, like you're being rude. And that's often, I think, how people approach conversation. Like, it's like, you're being rude, and now it becomes an attack, and here we go, rather than saying, hey, just so you know, like the way you said that felt like it was really rude. Is that what you were intending?
Yeah.
Because then there's this opportunity to go, oh, you heard that as rude? No, like what I was trying to do was just be really clear about it. And now we've got an opportunity for like a connected conversation. I always said, like with my kids, I wanted people to see their heart, not to make assumptions or judgments based on exterior actions, because I think those assumptions are filtered through our own experience rather than what actually is. And I think you guys both touched on that. Yeah. It's interesting, like when Chris, you said, if I say what I really feel, it will make me sound rude. And I honestly, that the saying what you really feel, for me, feels like one of the biggest gifts that my family has given me. Like, my family is blunt. And I was raised in the most implication-based household you can possibly imagine. It's all about everybody else and keeping them happy and never saying anything to upset. And here I am in this household that is like the opposite extreme. And honestly, like as hard as it was, it's been so freeing. Like what you see is what you get. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I wish everybody could live in a space where that's the reality, right? But yeah, my youngest will often say, "I know this might sound rude, but," and then like here comes the directness, right? And it's like that prefacing, like, "Hey, I'm aware that you might hear this differently than I meant it to be, but this is where I'm coming from." Yeah, it's cool.
I can relate to that a lot of, growing up in that type of
Mhm,
environment, right? And then really because of my husband, like
mm,
learning to be more direct and realizing that like being direct doesn't mean being mean. Being direct doesn't
mhm.
mean being rude. It's just clear,
Yes.
right? It's just clear. Um my best friend, she's like, "You've come such a long way. I remember when we would go out to eat, and if they brought you the wrong drink, you wouldn't even say anything. You'd just be like, 'Oh, it's fine.'" She's like, "And now you'd be like, 'Oh, hey, actually, I ordered a Dr. Pepper. Can I?'" Right? And I was like, "Yeah, a lot of this has truly been from like watching my husband
Mm,
never that's just what he does." And I'm like, "Oh,
mhm,
you can do that?
mhm,
Oh." Okay. So, yeah, he's taught me a lot too, and my daughter is very much like
mm,
him, very direct, very literal, like,
mm,
she has no filter in, like, the best way, and
mm.
so a really funny story is we were at the dog park last summer, so she would have been about 8. It was just me and her, some guy and his dogs came up, and, he's probably at least 15 years older than I, and we're just making small talk, whatever. And he looks at her and he goes, "What's your name?" And she goes, "None of your business." And he looks at me like, "What?" And he goes, "What's your mom's name?" She goes, "None of your business." And he looks at me and I was like, "Sorry, dude." Like, that is who she is. And I was like, "You don't have to like that. Like, you can think that is rude. That's fine. But number one, she doesn't owe you anything. You're a stranger. She doesn't trust you. But number two, she's not afraid to just say the thing.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
and
and I
the
get
reality
there's
is it is none of his business.
it isn't. And I was like, "Dang, girl, I'm kind of jealous that that's like your default." And I get that, sometimes people have to, intentionally and unintentionally mask for their own safety and,
Yeah.
certain situations, right? To
Yeah.
not inadvertently cause more harm to themselves.
Yeah.
Um, but moments like that where I'm like, wow, you're starting from such a, and she's just
Yeah.
different than I am, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I wish I would have had a little bit of that when I was a
Oh
kid.
gosh.
How different would
Yeah.
it be? So I'm having to learn to grow into to being, a little bit better at being a direct communicator, but there is freedom in that for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm. I feel like I've learned so much from my kids and my partner. Like, just, yeah, things that were just assumed as like, this is normal, this is how everyone does it. And none of my family just goes along with something because that's the way it's done. There are always questions, and they always like, they stop me, and I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. You're
Yes.
right. Why do we do it that way? Or, gosh, you're right. I don't have an answer for that one.
Well, and I think it's the questioning too that um is is such a good thing and can get people in trouble just based off of
Mm,
society standards, right? Of like thinking that because you're questioning something that again, you're being rude or disrespectful. Like my husband needs the context for everything. So he has a million questions and people
mhm,
can read that as being like just chill. You don't need to know
mm,
everything. You don't. And he's like, "No, I need all the information."
yeah,
And that has been misinterpreted,
mm,
his entire life. And when he's like, "No, I genuinely want to know. I'm not trying to challenge you."
It gets seen as rigid and not going
mm,
with the flow, and it's like,
yeah,
whoa, I need, I struggle with that too. Like sometimes, like even if it's a simple thing as, hey, we're going out to dinner. Well, where are we going? What time are we going? Yeah, and how are we getting there? It's like, yeah, I get that. Like, why don't you just go with the flow? Especially with my sister, if she's taking me out. It's like, well, because I want to know if I need to bring my own car or like what time. I got other things. Like I got a dog that I gotta come back for in peace. I gotta like make sure that she's either fed or something. So like that's why I ask if I just go with the flow. Like it could be 10 hours that I'm somewhere and I don't want to be there. So it's it's um it can be a real exhausting thing to go through too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when people don't see that as curiosity and there's already an assumption, there's already a
Yeah.
judgment
Yeah.
on that right from the beginning, instead of being like, "Oh, I wonder why they want or need to know this." It's the like, "Why do you need to know this?"
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't be asking it if there wasn't some reason. You might not have the same reason that I do, but I'd have a reason to ask it.
Yeah.
And also, I think, like, from a cultural, social perspective is, questioning gets people in trouble,
Yeah.
right? Like, that is our society, is we're taught to not question. And
Mhm.
I've written a lot about this specifically of like, because if we actually started questioning things, we might have to admit that, like, yeah, actually, that thing that we've always been doing
Mhm.
isn't helpful, or that thing actually harms people. And then something would have to change,
Yeah.
or we'd have to have a conscious choice of continuing to do the thing that we know causes harm. So, like, so questioning, I think, gets pathologized in general a
Yeah.
lot, and especially young kids. And they will either learn to stop questioning things because there are real consequences for them
Mhm.
if they do, or they kind of become that adult like my husband, who's I'm just the asshole, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
because I'm not willing to just accept things for what they are. I need a good reason.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because words that I heard from my husband first, and then from my oldest when we were considering, maybe we need to do an assessment to figure out what's going on, was something along the lines of, I always thought there was something wrong with me. And just like those clear messages that started so early on, just because he had a different way of existing and processing the world. And I think, a lot of times as people, we want like certainty and we make assumptions that everyone should be like this rather than again allowing like room for the unknown or room for learning, or you mentioned the word, Sam, curiosity. Like that's one of my favorite words these days, because curiosity just allows there to be a lack of judgment and a willingness to take in. And so I think, yeah, unfortunately, when we don't approach relationships and people with that sense of, huh, they have a different way of doing things. I wonder what that's all about, or that's really interesting. Rather, we sometimes tend to approach it with, well, why are they doing it that way? That's not the way we do it. And yeah, I find that's been one of the greatest gifts that my family has brought me, is just a real openness to like be willing to question and things that I would never have thought to question because I was such a great rule follower. I was such a great, do things exactly the way you're told to do them at school and at home. And I was the compliant child, right? So, yeah.
I remember telling my husband something this winter about like how like certain things, it totally makes sense why they are
Mm,
pathologized, why certain traits are
mm,
pathologized, not because they're wrong, but because they threaten something,
challenging.
right? Like, you're challenging
Yeah.
something, and You know, I love to talk about like micro, macro systems
Mm,
view versus like, you know, individual view of, you know, the systems we live in, they want control,
mm,
right? And a lot of us also want control, and questioning those things is already kind of like, ooh, ooh, it's threatening that. Um, so I think there's something to be said about my curiosity to the things that are pathologized, and like, why is a child questioning something seen as a
right.
in this way?
Yeah.
Or why one child can ask the same question as another child, but one of them gets pathologized
Mm,
and the other one doesn't, depending on who they are, what they look like, the language they speak,
mm,
all of those
mhm,
kinds of things, right? Um, and the new thing I've been telling myself lately is like, if this thing wasn't a threat in some way or another, we wouldn't have to do that. So
mm.
clearly, right? Like if we're told to just shit, we shouldn't be asking questions. Now I'm like, "Oh, I see.
It's time
I
to ask
see.
some questions.
It's time to ask some questions." Uh-huh. Because right, like who's keeping the power and control
Yeah.
when we're just maintaining that?
Oh gosh, it's interesting that you say those words because as you were talking, the thought for me was I think probably a big part of this is our underlying understanding of relationships and how to do them. And um, some of my early work was helping run groups for women who had experienced abuse in relationship, and we had kind of a framework that we used where in a relationship where there were power dynamics at play, the person who was the controlling one, words to kind of describe where they were coming from and their worldview was central, superior, and deserving, and it left peripheral, subservient, and inferior for the other partner. um, and then changing that to a relational lens, it was mutual, equal, connected. And so I'm so thankful that I stumbled on this framework like within my first year of practice, which happened to also be right at the beginning of my relationship with Rich. And so we would have lots of conversations about, mutual, equal, connected in terms of our relationship. But we also started thinking about it in terms of our kids. Like, are we above our kids and we know better just because we're a little bit older? Or do we trust that they are bringing their own experience and knowledge and wisdom to the table? And so functioning from a space of mutual, equal, connected, where
Mm,
it's about all of us. We are all equal. No one person's thing is more important than the other. It really shifts how you can have some of these conversations, right? And it shifts the willingness to like take influence from other people. And so as you were talking, I was like, gosh, I wonder if like a big part of this again connects back to kind of the underpinnings of society where we aren't functioning from that space. Yeah.
I think there has to be a willingness from both parties to
Mm,
approach uh, this kind of thing uh, amicably and respectfully, because I've lived both sides of the coin, right?
yeah.
Where I had a late lady who was fantastic about understanding the way my mind worked as an autistic individual. Not only because she had a autistic or has a or had an autistic cousin,
Mm,
but she also struggled with her own mental health, and so she kind
mm,
of understood that. But then, uh, so there was that uh, willingness from both of us to kind of meet in the middle and
mhm,
have uh, that kind of like curiosity for one another. And uh, but on the other side, I as soon as I was in another relationship before this,
mm,
where as soon as I got diagnosed, it was, well, not only are you worthless and defective,
mm,
you need to not be on this earth anymore. And so, not, that is, at the risk of derailing this with a sob story, which I don't want to do. It's, I think the point is, both parties have to approach it with that same kind of unified and respectful approach, because otherwise the alternative can be dangerous, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think you're so right. Like when it comes to that relational paradigm, like mutual, equal, connected, um, you need everyone on board. That can't be a one person is functioning from that and the other person isn't, because that's where abuse takes place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that it's it's everyone functioning from that same paradigm of like, we're in this together, we're a team, we've got this. You matter, I matter, your thoughts matter, my thoughts matter. How do we do this together? Like it's a very, yeah, it's a different way of approaching it altogether, and it requires all parties involved, both parties in a partnership, all parties in a family. Yeah.
Yeah, and that way of doing things is so not normal, right? We live in
Mm-hmm.
such a like individualistic
Hmm.
hierarchical society,
Yeah.
that like having I think of myself as like running like a matriarchal household where we all have a say, right? Like everyone, right? And in other, terms, maybe probably more democratic as well, but like
Hmm.
we all have a voice, we all have a say. Like no one's above each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
And that is just so very, very different than most people, most systems, families, just life in general. That people can be like, what?
Mm.
That's whoa. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Because it is so different.
Yeah.
Because everyone, again, we're all coming in with mutual respect and wanting to understand each other,
Yeah.
because we're intentionally not having that hierarchical,
Yeah.
like, my needs matter than your needs, or it's
Yeah.
both of our needs matter. How do
Yeah.
we make both of these work?
Yeah.
Here's what I need, here's what you need. Like maybe I need to leave the room for my need. Maybe like even between my two kids, you guys both have different needs right now and they're clashing. What can we do so that you both, to the best of our ability, get what you need? Like,
It's interesting because it does feel kind of countercultural for here in North America for
yeah.
sure. And I remember when my kids were younger. I mean, our household sounds very similar to yours, Sam. Like we are not the parents who tell everyone how things get done. We would say, Team Giesbrecht, we're in this together. Here are
Yes.
our rules, and the rules are for everyone. And the rules were, we treat each other with kindness and consideration. We use kind words, not mean words, like just things like that. And I often felt like it was hard to do that in a sense, because there was a lot of judgment that came from people because you're not doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Your kids are out of control. Like, I don't know if you guys ever saw like the best Christmas pageant ever, the Herdmans.
Hmm.
I always felt like our house
Yes.
was the Herdmans. Like, one Christmas Eve, they're standing on the bench at the back of the church singing so loudly that everyone turned around to look at them. And I
Yep.
was just like, we are the Herdmans. What can I
Yes. Yep.
say?
Yep.
But the pressure not to be that, right?
Yeah.
And I love now that my kids are young adults. Like now the feedback we get is, "Oh my gosh, your kids are amazing human beings. Like they really care about people and they get along. Like they sit around the table talking with each other." And I'm like, yeah, that's because we laid those foundations when they were little, and it didn't always look good, but we had this longer term vision that we were like
Yes.
clinging to and hoping we
Yes.
were going to be right, that it was the
Yes.
right way to go. But it can be hard in the moment because it is a really different way of doing relationship than what we see around us often. Yeah.
Why can't we all just be the same? Yeah, no. Um,
Or maybe
it's
just more open. Yeah.
how do we get there? Being more
Hmm.
open. I
Well, I
still don't
think
have
we'd
an answer.
start with conversations like this. Like, I think that was one reason why I really wanted to have this conversation. Because yeah, if even one person listens to this and says, "Huh, there was something there I hadn't thought about before," I think that's how change starts to happen. And um, I'm a very firm believer in like lead by example. So if I want people to do something, I have to live it out. And so if I want people to have the kind of relationships that are led by curiosity and that see what everybody brings as having value, then I've got to treat people that way. I've got to live that out. So I think, conversations like this, one relationship at a time. Sam's T-shirt. I gotta get that one. Yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes people, we don't even know another way. We've never
Mm,
even seen another way of maybe
yeah.
communicating with each other or working with each other. Um, and like you don't even know it exists sometimes. Um, so to hear someone else, talk about it or write about it, and I mean, there's plenty of people that I've followed and have read that I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I didn't know. Um, that it's like, how can we kind of take these experiences that we have all had and kind of put that back out there of like, hey, I didn't know this either at one point, but like,
Yeah.
here's what I've learned. Maybe that helps you,
Yeah.
you know? Um, because if we don't have another model to go off of,
Mm,
we will just do the default like by
yeah.
default.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll just keep doing what we're doing. Which really is not good for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's really not good for certain people, right? Because certain
Yeah.
people are absolutely more harmed
Harmed.
than others in our current model. You know, like back to Chris's point of like getting to the point where all this external like stigma and shame and
Mm,
all of this like really has impact on people's internal well-being and their mental
mhm.
health, even if that was no one's intent,
Right.
right? Like you don't have to have that ill intent, and some people do,
Yeah.
but you don't even have to have that ill intent to have like that impact on somebody of like,
Yeah.
you're wrong, there's something wrong with you. Like
Yeah.
no one has to say those words,
Yeah.
but it is the way people treat you. and
Yeah.
and if they are even curious, I want to know why.
Yeah.
I wonder about that
Yeah.
versus, God, why do you always do that?
Yeah.
I've been struggling to formulate my question. Um, I think, and somewhat to your point, Sam, I think that there are some people out there that the intent is good in
Mm,
the sense that like they want to they want to see you as your as a neurodiverse person uh as normal, right? So that you're not defined by
mm,
whatever's wrong with you in air quotes, right? Uh but at the same time they look at when you try to like contextualize things
mm,
uh for why you interpreted something a certain way or do things a certain way, they turn around and say, well, that's just an excuse, right?
oh,
and like they mean well, like, but it's like, well, no,
mhm,
it's not an excuse.
mm,
It's how I'm receiving the information, and like you got to do it differently.
mhm.
And there's that perception of like, well, no, you live in a normal world, you have to be normal, right? And so that like, how do you how do you talk to those people? How do you get
Mm.
them to see that, like, the world, the world, as much as I would love for it to be black and white,
Mm-hmm.
the world isn't that version of black and white. And how do you how can I encourage you as that person who says that your neurodivergence is an excuse
Mm-hmm.
to see that gray area, right? Because it is what it is. It's a thing. It's how I'm going to interpret the world, right? But I also see the fine line between uh, learned helplessness and being defined
Mm-hmm.
by your neurodivergence, and I also understand the importance of meeting the world halfway, because not
Mm.
everyone's going to meet you halfway, right? So, like, how do we address that dynamic in our relationships?
Mm. I feel like that one is so layered.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm thinking about that and I'm thinking, well, if someone is not willing to understand that, hey, when I'm trying to help you understand where I'm coming from, if I'm using it as an excuse, I'm digging my heels in and I'm saying, I have nothing to learn. I am right. You are wrong. But that's not where that's coming from. It's coming
Mhm.
from a, hey, I want us to be able to understand each other. And so if someone hears it as that, I feel like trying to shift that might actually require them to shift their entire way of viewing the world. Because it's like, this is because where I hear that is, I hear that a lot with parents of,
Mhm.
I have a lot of neurodivergent clients, and so kids who are struggling with school, and we were unschoolers. We took a very non-traditional way of educating that really worked for my kids. And I know about all the different options that are open. And so sometimes I'll start asking questions and they often get shut down really quickly because the type of comment that comes up is, well, they have to learn how to do this. They're never going to be able to live in the real world. And I'm like, really? Because maybe they can. Like, maybe not everyone has to do it exactly the same way. But I think that's where I think there's so many layers to it that it's not just about how do I get them to interact in that way in this relationship, but it really is getting at like the core values and the foundations of how they do life. And that's really hard. Like you're talking paradigm. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the hardest things for people to shift is moving their paradigm to a different way of looking at the world. So I don't know if I have an answer for you. Slowly, painfully, one step at a time.
It's like, how do you
Yeah.
make someone go from 2D thinking to 3D thinking, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
right, unless they're already at a place where that is possible for them and they want to. Like, some people don't want to.
No.
Some
Well,
people
it's
Mhm.
working
don't.
for them. Yeah.
It's working for them. And, like, my theory is, like, you know, disbelief is a really good strategy to not have to change anything,
Mm,
Mhm.
right? Like,
mhm,
Chris, if you tell me like, well, this is right, like you're trying to explain maybe how you interpreted something, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's just an excuse. I don't believe you. It's super easy for me to shut that down
mhm.
by saying that
Yeah.
because if I believed you, I would either have to change a belief that I hold or an action or inaction. Um, Something would probably have to change somewhere.
Mhm,
So I think those to me are always really good indicators of like resistance
mhm,
of okay, if I believe this person, what would have to change,
mm. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like and
I
people don't like that. People don't
yeah.
like that because
Well,
it
and
would
I
require something of them, some effort in one way or another,
yeah,
and that's just not very normal.
yeah. Well, and I think sometimes maybe the way to start opening up opportunity for that kind of change has to almost be the positive use of the word subversive, where it has to come in indirectly in a way that invites people to think about something differently. And so,
Yes.
often, like, how do you get someone to move from a paradigm of central superior deserving to a paradigm of mutual equal connected? That is
Yes.
really tough work. There are some therapists that are very good at that. It's an area that is not my favorite to work in. But what I do know is that one of the strategies is, how do you help the person see the benefits of moving to the new paradigm? And
Yes.
not just the benefits to the other person, but the benefits to themselves.
To them too.
Right?
Because it benefits everybody in the end.
It does.
It
And so
benefits everybody.
sometimes getting people to even be willing to consider it, you
Yeah.
almost have to, like, lead them to this place of seeing what some of the benefits can be for them.
Yes.
Because if I'm willing to see this differently, how does that change my life for the better? And I think that's often where the door starts to open a little bit. But that's creative and difficult work, right? So,
Very.
yeah.
Very. My favorite, like, piece of that is, like, learning just in my work of working with humans one-on-one for the last 20 years is, like, it if we actually want, in most cases in our interpersonal relationships, right? Like, if we actually want someone else to understand, we can't come at them with, like, the pathologizing and the shaming, right? Because as soon
No.
as we do, like, the defenses go up. Like, we know that's how I am. As soon as someone comes at me, I'm like, "Ugh,"
Mhm.
versus, again, the curiosity of, like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I wonder if you ever thought about this other perspective." Like, a lot less defensive. No
Yeah,
one's wrong. No one's being shamed. Like,
yeah.
here's
Invitational.
invitational.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm. Something to ponder.
Something to
for
ponder.
sure. Yeah. Making the world better one relationship at a time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm. Yeah, so, I mean, we're coming up on an hour, and I'm, very aware of the fact that you generously gave some of your afternoon to doing this. So maybe, I mean, I would love to continue this conversation another time if you guys are up for it. This has been just really fun. And it feels like we've just, like, touched the very top of this conversation. But yeah, just as we're kind of, like, coming up on the hour here, what do you have any thoughts that you're like, I want to just, this is something that I really want to leave people with, or this is something that struck me, or this is something I want to share? Um,
Again, choosing is the hard part, but I think
it
Chris
is.
has something.
I think it's if there's that, this dynamic of, there's someone in your life that doesn't think like you, is neurodivergent, approaching that with empathy and compassion uh can go a really long way, because it's a struggle.
Mm,
Like you had alluded to earlier, Heidi, that growing up autistic and not knowing about it, I
mm,
always felt like there was something wrong with me, right?
yeah.
And uh I still feel like there's something wrong with me, and
Mm,
so it's not easy to navigate the world where systems are in place that aren't meant
mhm,
for us to think differently, right?
yeah.
But at the same time, it if you find yourself at the other side of the equation, of being neurodivergent in a world not built for you, it's how do you like advocate for yourself, in a sense that, like, identify what you need, advocate for what you need, and if you're not getting what you need, then change your service provider. Or like cut off ties or whatever it is. Just put yourself first, but also, um, you know, don't use it as a crutch. Is or don't it's rather than having the seeing yourself as a victim of like some cruel injustice of the world. It's how do you see it as a gift, because that sense of learned helplessness can also be so detrimental. But and so just kind of like, yeah, that's what I would leave the world or everyone with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. That's gonna be hard to top, Chris. I mean, I think so much of this has to come down to empathy and really being willing and wanting to understand people too, to like actually listen. Like, do I want to understand or do I just want to be right? And sometimes me understanding you is truly me having no idea, but believing you.
Yes.
Like when my husband tells me like his experience, like I believe him. I don't have to understand it. I don't have to be like, oh, I feel that same way too.
Yeah.
But the belief part is really huge because there's a lot of harm that comes from just people not being believed. So I think in whatever relationship that is, and it can be, a small thing or a big thing, it can be your kid telling you it's too bright in here and believing them that it's too bright for them. It might not be too bright for you, but for them it is. Like knowing that we have different experiences and neither of them are wrong.
Right.
Neither one are wrong, but like in that situation, it's easy for me to turn down the light because it's not bothering me, but it's bothering her.
Yeah.
So being willing to make some of those changes as well, where we can when someone tells us something is too much. Again, yeah, if we don't believe them, then there's harm in that in and of itself. So trusting, the information that people are sharing with you about their experiences are real, and you don't have to know what that feels like exactly to believe them.
Awesome.
I thought you said it was going to be hard to top. You nailed it
Oh,
with ease.
sorry, Chris.
Nice. Well, I think about just, yeah, some of the things that you said just kind of sparked thoughts. Like, I guess depending on how you're coming into relationship, first of all, I think of my amazing neurodivergent family and clients, and just I love I always say, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I always say my autistic clients are some of my favorite clients. I love working with them because they just bring this unique, wonderful perspective. And yet, one of the things that I see is that they are often the ones that are hardest on themselves because of the experiences they've had. And genuinely, that makes my heart so sad. Like I'm like, if I can send them out just understanding that they are amazing, wonderful, creative, thoughtful human beings that deserve so much better than what they've been given. That is always, and so I'm thinking like if there are people who are listening who are maybe in that space themselves, like I would want them to take away from this that they are beautiful, unique, wonderful humans that have something really important to bring to the world. And if the world doesn't see that, that's not about them. That's actually about a world that's a mismatch. And if someone's listening that kind of comes from a different perspective of, oh wow, this is all new to me. Like, yeah, I always thought there was something wrong with these people. I think like I have had to um, I've had to learn humility, like just the recognition that just because this is how I do it and a large part of the world maybe does it, it doesn't mean it's the right way, and that maybe I can learn something from it. And you know what you said, Sam, about like believing, like I remember when Rich said, I don't know why I don't do the things that I know matter to you. I love you, and I don't do the things that you need me to do to show you that. And I was like, I don't know how to make sense of that, because my mind says, if you loved me, you would do this.
Yeah.
And now you're doing the opposite. So therefore, the only thing that my mind can conceptualize is you must not love me. And yet here's this guy in front of me who I know can't lie to anybody. And he's saying, I love you, and I'm not doing the things, and I don't know why. I have to believe him, because it doesn't make sense in my world, but it does in his. And so just having like the humility to believe that there could be a different way of doing things, the respect to honor that. And it doesn't mean that we don't, like you said, Chris, like that we don't keep working to connect across those differences, because I did need him to figure out how to show me that he loved me, because otherwise I'm withering away in this relationship. But I also needed to have the respect and the consideration of where he was coming from, and curiosity. And every time I brought up something, to think about how to bring that conversation up in an invitational way rather than an attacking way. And so when I think of, both of those sides, for me, I think the underlying piece that connects them all together is, can we all just work really hard to see each other's hearts? Because I think when we are willing to see each other's hearts, it opens up all these things much more effortlessly. So I guess that's my closing thought.
Beautiful.
Love it.
Yeah. You guys, this has been so amazing. I've really enjoyed it. I will be messaging you both and saying, do you want to do it again?
Let's do it again.
Yeah, and thanks to
I'll be
everyone
back.
who joined. Yeah, this was
Yeah.
awesome. There were lots of conversations in the chat, which is great. And I know we kind of popped in a few times and then didn't, but thank you everyone who watched, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you.
Yes,
All
take it
right.
easy.
All right. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.